Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to take a look at the Xtouc Raiden S. I have a nice medium to large EDC knife here at 7.92 inches long with a 3.4 inch blade of Bowler M390 stainless steel. See it here. It has somewhat of a two-tone finish. You have a very light blasting, I don't know what it is, they call it pearlescence finish on the primary and on this top swedge, and then your flats have a nice satin finish on it. Looks nice. Kind of wish they would have left the Xtouc off of it, but you know, that's just a nitpick. Now, this drop point has a tip that is pretty close to the center line of the pivot. It does sit a little bit above it. However, the way this knife arcs down, that blade's canted down, so I'm still able to get that tip down on things without going vertical. So it's not the hardest thing in the world to do. So it's still pretty darn versatile. We have a excellent sharpening choil that the plunge comes to right here where my fingernail is. So you can have tons of sharpening light before it starts to widen up in the back right here. And this doubles as a forward finger choil. You can get right up to that edge if you need to control what you're doing, pushing into something. Very, very nice. You can choke back if you want to be away from that edge. Also, the thumb studs stay out of the cutting path. You do have jimping, but that is for the front flipper. I mean, unless I choke back right here, and it's still kind of hard to get that jimping, but it's got a decent little flat spot there. I found it rather comfortable. You have a decent height flat grind that, like I said, has this blasting finish on it. And when I say it's like slick to the touch, very, very smooth. So whatever they did, whatever kind of blasting this is, or sand blasting, or whatever it is, they do some good finishing work underneath, because you don't see any kind of striations underneath there. And it's a very well done. It's not usually my favorite finish, but this one didn't smudge up like a lot of the blasted finishes do. So whatever this is, I don't mind it all that much. I think it looks nice, and it's very, very smooth to the touch. And we'll find out if it helps at all during the cutting. This flat grind comes down to around 16 thousandths behind the edge. So it should be pretty darn slicey. Let's test this M390 out. Man, the edge on this knife came so sharp out of box, just like all the Xtouc knives I've gotten so far, which is always good to see, and it's always great, because whenever they're not, testing knives that are not super sharp is miserable. It's really painful in the hand, especially in some of the cutting. But blasting through the cardboard, I try to do long runs of cuts, just to see if the edge would slide out. I didn't really see any issues. Maybe if you were going to cut longer rows of cardboard. But yeah, did really well. Now we're going to test the ergos and see how well that edge wants to bite. I'm using light pressure at first. And yeah, I can make fine curls if I want. This wood's kind of rough and wasn't giving it the best opportunities. But I started increasing the pressure. The handle scales are nice and comfortable, especially with that anode finish, because they have to polish it before they do the little finish. So nice and comfortable. Everything's soft to the touch. No hot spots that I felt. And I was able to get a lot of pressure choked up like that. And I could have did it for a good amount of time. Now you can see here, I'm able to get that tip down onto the material to make a drag cut. So I did have to lift it higher than I would like. I'd prefer the tip a little lower, but it's blasting through the material. That edge feels nice and crisp, and it's performing better than, I'd say, a lot of the M390 knives that I test regularly. I was kind of shocked that I had to do a second cut because it went through so fast. That's some pretty dense corner cardboard. I can't speak today. And I can feel after the first cut of the 10-ounce denim, a good bit of aggression to that edge. Hopefully it holds up during the sisal rope. We're about to find out in just 1 second. Now we go on to the 1/2-inch sisal rope. After the first cut, got a big smile on my face because yes, it's performing nicely. And I will say, being that you have that higher belly, that belly comes up to that tip, you're able to push the forward portion almost like a Tanto, but even better. So I'm pushing it and basically rocking the blade down. So it's making sharp work of this, blasting through it. I mean, you can see how, of course it is sped up, but you can see how fast I'm going through the rope. And if you don't see me wiping the rope off every 5 seconds, it's pretty comfortable in my hand also. So no problem so far. We end up getting through 95 cuts and I just run out of rope. I definitely could have done more. So I'm definitely happy with that result, especially if it, for a $170 knife, I think that's a-okay. Good overall quality, and so far so good with all the stuff that I've seen coming out of the Xtouc factory. But yeah, should be able to drop it up to hair shaving sharp as well once I'm done. Let's take a look at the deployment and the action of the knife. It's riding on ceramic ball bearings with a ceramic detent ball. You have big old thumb studs and a front flipper. The thumb studs have a little blue, it looks like an anodized titanium piece inside of them. Now they are a little bit slick. You can see how they got this bevel around them. As long as you get your thumb underneath it, I have no problems, and it comes out pretty nice and fast, pretty drop shut. The front flipper works as well. You can also reverse flick it. Pretty good action and really smooth action. You can slow roll it also. Now let's take a look at this handle area. You have the lightning anodization. It's a matte ano here. They didn't take it to a full mirror polish before they did the anodization. It's not really my favorite handle finish, because whenever you do this finish, you have to polish the titanium, which makes it really slick in hand. Now, I hadn't had any problems with it coming out of my hands or anything, but just something to note. I think it does look pretty decent here. And one good thing about having it in the matte finish, I can touch it with my fingers and you don't see the smudges. If this was full mirror polished and brought it to that very vibrant lightning ano, when you touch it, it's going to turn to this color. So that is one benefit of having it done like this. Hopefully it's coming across. Another benefit of having this finish done is it every time I've ever done it, it makes the action even better. So this knife does have a nice smooth action to it. And all these corners are nice and softened, because you can see it basically rounded over the very edge of that. So very comfortable in hand, especially how it's got this downward arc to the scales. Whenever I was doing the cutting, nice and comfortable, depending on where your fingers land. Now this right here, for the most part, I can keep whenever I'm choked up, I can keep my fingers in front of that. I have a medium-sized hand. Now if you have large hands, extra large hands, your finger might land on that and could possibly become uncomfortable. I don't know. I can't tell you. I can only speak for how it feels in my hands. I had no hot spots during my cutting. The pocket clip stayed out of the way of my palm. Everything was nice. You have a blue titanium anodized pivot collar on both sides. You have a Torque T8 for the pivot. It's pretty flush with the scales, your hardware. Unfortunately, they went with T6 for the body screws, clip screw, and lock bar insert right here. You have a milled titanium pocket clip with the same anodizing ano finish on it. They stayed off of the lock relief right here. I didn't really have any issues going in and out of the pocket. Now it is a pretty stiff clip, but being how slick this finish is, you want it to be pretty stiff or this thing's going to come right out of your pocket. I found it went in and out of my pockets pretty nicely, and it sits fairly deep as well. It goes to about right there. It's about all you have sticking out. You have a little small titanium backspacer with a gear pattern that sits a little bit above here. I mean, it does have some traction, but I didn't notice it whenever I was using it. You have an integrated lanyard loop back here. Take a look at the inside. You have a bunch of internal milling on the top. Very nicely done there. And all that they could on the bottom. coming in at 118.5 grams or 4.179 ounces. Not bad. Now let's take a look at the lockup. Mine's sitting at around 50% or so. It almost looks like on the lock insert, they carbonized it. You see that finish right there? It almost looks like a stippled finish. Not sure. The lockup on this thing is very, very tight. No movement whatsoever. I can't muscle any movement out of it. Now, the lock side is flush with the show side scale. However, they do have a chamfer here and here. Sometimes whenever they do this finish, I get nervous because it's slippery. Now, it's not the easiest for me to do with my thumb because this portion is very slick. But the ball of my finger, that's how I disengage it. I have no issues whatsoever doing it that way. But just something to note, if you only like to use the tip of your thumb right there, you just have to be deliberate pushing your thumb in there. I would have definitely liked to see this side come down a little bit more so you could have a better access. Now for some quick size comparisons, we got the Ontario Wrap Model 1 and 2, Spyderco PM2 and Power 3. Pretty much identical in length to the American Blade Works Model 1 and the Remet WD-107. Alright, now for my nitpicks and complaints, mainly just nitpicks. I could have done without the lettering here on the blade, or they could have done it much more discreetly. And I could have done it without the M390, maybe put it little right here. I just think it looks cleaner when they do that. And I'm not the biggest fan of the finish, mainly because of how slick it can get. Now, like I said, I feel nice and locked in whenever I was using it. But it's definitely way more slippery with this polished finish. And I would have loved to see a little bit more lock bar access. Maybe cut this down some to let my finger get in there a little bit easier. But I combat that by using the fat of my thumb to get there. And like I said, the thumb stud's a little bit slippery. Once you get the hang of it, just get underneath it. And I had no issues once I started doing that. And the front flipper works well also. It didn't tap for lefties. Not something that affects me, but I do get it for all my lefties out there. But other than that, at $170, do I think it's worth it? Yeah, I do. I asked them what the HRC is on the M390 because I'm shocked. You know, it performs really, really well. If I happen to find it out before I edit this video, I'll put it up here. But if not, that means I did not. Definitely happy with the way this one performed. Overall, I like the knife. And like I said, if you can't afford, you don't want to spend $170 for the premium version, they also have a budget version in 14C with G10 and just a old rinky-dink looking clip. So there you go. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them down below. I hope everybody's having an absolute amazing day. I will see y'all on the next one. Peace.